So let's talk. We are in week 12, moving quickly towards the end of the semester. You've now finished 3 papers. Grades are coming back on your second one soon. The third one you're in the middle of revision for. The semester's moving along, and we're getting closer to the end. And I don't know about you, but I'm feeling tired. It's that time of the semester to feel tired, to feel tense, to feel a little grumpy with all the things we got to do. And now there's this other thing. You got to wrap up reading this book. You got to figure out what you want to say, and you got to write a substantial paper for your last major paper assignment for English 131. The assignment you got is asking you to write a critical book review. And that may or may not be something you're comfortable with. In fact, what may be happening is you are used to writing a book review. You know how to write about a text and sort of summarize and sort of talk about it in a proficient academic way. But you're learning for this assignment that there's something a little bit more that you've got to do, that you've got to have this interpretation, this analysis in there that is asking you to do something more. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit about commentary and how we are going to move through this commentary to find something a little bit more. But I want to talk to you now as you're finishing up reading this book. Where are you going to go with this critical book review? How do you move yourself towards doing solid commentary? Let's talk a little bit about the assignment again and take a look at what the assignment's asking you to do. A review as a public argument. You're not writing a book review or book report, an Amazon or Yelp review. You're not trying to sell the book. You are writing a critical argument. And I'm not going to read through all this assignment, but I just want to make sure we hit down here at the bottom. Here are the minimum requirements for the paper. The paper must cover the book and your review of the book with substantial detail. Don't BS your way through this paper. Don't pretend like you have read a book that you haven't and try to write about it meaningfully. And actually, if you think about the integrity of academic writing and what I'm trying to get you to think about as far as academic writing goes, trying to BS your way through reading this book and writing about this book in a meaningful way will go directly against that sense of academic integrity, where you can write rhetorically powerful stuff because you have the ethos to do that. If you haven't read this book, you can't do this paper, and you can't in any kind of effective way, because the whole paper is asking you to have read this book and have something to say about it. And reading the book's just the first part. You've got to have something to say. So the paper must be focused on establishing, explaining, and proving a specific claim about the public. The paper must be developed as a persuasive, well-organized, and well-supported argument. And then the paper must be 4 pages, MLA format, adequate citation. What are you going to do? You've got this book that you're reading. This decent-sized, lengthy book, the Algiers Motel Incident, and you're trying to figure out how and why this is meaningful. What do you do? Well, again, we're going to talk a little bit about commentary next week, but this idea of commentary is built on this idea of patterns of meaning, which you heard me talk about in week 9. I'm going to review that pattern a little bit, and we're going to talk about what do you do now that you finish the book. So here we are back with the document that I shared in the PowerPoint from the lecture from week 9. You have a box, something to analyze. You pull it out, the thing that you want to analyze. In this case, you pull out the Algiers Motel Incident, and you start to build authority over it. Part of that is just simply reading and understanding what's going on, but part of that is also being able to look at specific things that are of real interest to you. Are you interested in issues of gender? Then you're really going to want to go and look at this book and analyze the places where it talks about being masculine or being a woman, how it treats different characters of different genders. Are you interested in issues of youth? Then you want to go look at how the young men in this book are talked about, the young women in this book are talked about, and what it has to say about them. Are you interested in issues of police brutality or police power? Then you want to go look at the ways that it talks about what it means to be a police officer in this book. Are you interested in issues of the history of Detroit? Then you want to go look at the parts about this book that have to say something about Detroit. Reading and building authority here means taking a very close look at the particularities of the things that you're interested in. Because then you've got to move into analysis. How are you going to analyze what's happening in this book? How are you going to make this meaningful? Well, in order to do that, you've got to have the substance built on your authority of the material you're talking about. But then you've got to think about, what is your method of analysis? Are you going to do rhetorical analysis of the way John Hershey wrote the book? Are you going to do comparative analysis to look at how this crime was talked about in this book and how, say, the George Floyd crime is talked about in current journalism? Are you going to do cause and effect analysis to try to figure out what are the effects of this story on the city of Detroit? Are you going to do identity analysis, where you look through the veins of what it means to be a young black man in Detroit, or a youth in Detroit, or what it means to grow up in a violent culture? There are many, many threads of analysis here. I'm sorry about the dogs in the background. There are many threads of analysis here that you could be looking at, but you should pick one. You should pick, or a couple. You should pick some methods of analysis. Let me give you a real quick example. The Derek Chauvin trial is going on right now. What if you were to look at how people are talking about the murder of George Floyd in that trial, and how the people in this book talk about the murder of the three kids in the Algiers motel? Again, with doing these pieces of analysis, you then start to build some ideas. Good ideas and bad ideas, and interesting ideas and poor ideas, and silly ideas and significant ideas. You build lots of ideas so that you can link up and find a pattern of meaning about this book, something that you want to say, and again, something about the public in this book, to do a critical review. How's that going to happen for you? How do you build this pattern of meaning so that you can work it into a thesis and a plan and a research and revision and writing? How do you build this pattern of meaning? The city of Detroit has always been a meaningful place in my life. And I lived the first couple of years of my life in the city of Detroit. Then I lived in the borders of Detroit. And then I came back as an adult and lived for a number of years in Detroit. And it's always had a significant place in my heart. And when I read of the history of Detroit, I care very much about what's going on, because I know parts of the city. I've lived there. Show you a little video. And then we'll talk a little bit more about how our personal experiences might lead us to a significant meaning when reading this book.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be yours, it will be yours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure, we will be sure. Oh, glory, 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 glory. Oh.
hoping they're okay too.
And yeah, we get that all lives matter, but I get to choose the color of my skin, so how does that matter? Your job is to serve and protect me, so where's the protection? Not only dying from racism and COVID infections.
Can't get snacks like Trayvon, get some sleep like Rihanna. The more they kill us off, we're losing our mothers and fathers.
Listen, when will enough be enough? I shouldn't be afraid that I'm next to go in handcuffs.
Look, it's time to team up and stop the cruelty.
My border's up and I see him walking towards me.
Walking, yelling, no justice, no peace.
Nearly, until my people reach equality.
When the glory comes, it'll be ours, it'll be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure, we will be sure.
I'm going to stop it there. If you want to see more of this video, go look up Detroit Youth Choir Glory on YouTube, and you'll find it. It's a really beautiful video, beautiful piece of work. Detroit is a meaningful part of my life. I have lived in Detroit. I've spent a lot of time in Detroit outside of when I wasn't living there. I teach on the border of Detroit. I have taught in Detroit. There's something about teaching for me and the city that holds really special significance. There's something about people around the age of 18 or people, younger adults, coming into some kind of knowledge, even, and it doesn't have to be young adults. I've taught plenty of ex-factory workers who have learned something more about their city, about their life through coursework, and become something different, gained a different kind of power. Something for me about teaching and education in the city of Detroit and becoming. I think if I were going to write about the Algiers Motel incident, I would focus on the 5 young lives that are there in this book, the kids. And I would ask, what does a city do to its children? And how might education bring them from a moment of trauma and strife, death and destruction, and into a moment of glory? And so maybe what I would do is I would look for images in this book that talk about youth and pain, youth and powerlessness, youth and trauma. And I would look for those moments and I'd pull them out and I would read them and I'd study them. And then I would start to think about, okay, now how do we move from this moment of trauma, this moment of pain, into a moment of glory? How do we get there? How do we find power? I think the city of Detroit is an amazing place for thinking about that kind of power, that kind of transformation. And I think I would use this book and interpret and look at education and power in Detroit and do a critical commentary on this book on those bases. What is your basis? What is it that you care about? I have some students who are looking at issues of war and trauma and pain that they've experienced in their lives and comparing it to what happened in Detroit. I've got some students who are looking at issues of being a military and being a part of an organization and thinking about how those organizations exercise power. I've got other students who are thinking about their very active protest life and how a moment like this would lead to an immediate protest, whereas in the 60s it was kind of hushed up. There are many, many avenues for doing a pattern, finding a pattern of meaning in this book. You've got to look. You've got to find some of your own agency in this book, your own authority, so that you can do analysis and develop your own patterns of meaning. I hope you're at it. I hope you're working at it. I hope you're finding something meaningful, because I want to know why we should read this book in the way that you read this book. That's what a critical commentary is going to bring us to. We'll talk to you next week. Keep on going with the discussions. Have a happy weekend. Take care.